what is the morale of our armed forces right now, or men and women who are actually in the service, to think that their lives are possibly under pressure from those that they're actually working with?
I think, the morale overall is good, but I do think that there are some things that are going on in our society that we have to be very cognizant about. One of the things that I know is a touchy subject for some people, but we've got to be realistic about this. Don't ask, don't tell, that everybody wants to keep pushing down the military's throat. The reality of it is that there are some things that the military requires of you when you're serving, and you want to feel that you can trust your comrade in arms. And if you can't trust your comrade, it's very difficult to really serve with that person when you know it's a matter of life and death. So I think that one of the big things that we have as we move forward in our country is we've got to do some real soul searching and recognize that we've asked these people to go overseas. We've asked them to serve and be willing to give their lives up voluntarily. We need to put them in the best environment that we can. And then when they're in Afghanistan or Iraq, we need to make sure that we're recognizing that the generals are the ones that are the experts, and not the elected officials. Many of our elected officials have never served a day in the military. And those general officers who I trust, we've got to listen to them and recognize that they have the forethought to want to put the best foot forward, but also to protect each one of those servicemen and women around this country and abroad to make sure that they're not in harm's way.
Dr. Johnson, we're going to get ready to take our break, and you're going to be holding on to the next segment. May we have a website, and I want to give it out a couple of times that the listeners can follow you and see what you stand for and what's going on.
Sure. Well, I would encourage them to go to Frederick Douglass Foundation.com. Frederick, Frederick, Douglass with 2 S's, Foundation.com.
Great. Probably after the break, we'll take another call or two. Let me give you the numbers. Local in the Tampa area, 727-441-3000. And everywhere else in Arkansas, Western Tennessee, 866-826-1340. We'll be right back with Dr. Johnson.
This is the Tantos.
Call for details.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the current generation and maybe the generation or two before it have not left the world a better place. They've made it progressively worse by embracing these ideas that you can do whatever you want and pay for it tomorrow. But somewhere along the line, a generation has to arise which is willing to be a Christ-like generation and take on the responsibility of sacrificing for the sake of posterity, for the sake of the true greater good, not the progressive socialist greater good, but the actual greater good. We have to be willing to say, you know what? I don't need to collect that check. I don't need to get paid off on the boondoggle. For the sake of my children, I'm going to have a harder time. I'm willing to sacrifice my quality of life in order to turn this country around.
Hi, this is Walter Hudson. For more fighting words, listen to US Web Talk Radio and check out our website at www.fightingwords.us.
Hi, this is David Zublik. Love your country, but fear your government. That's the motto of my show, America Talks. The mission of the broadcast is to take the country back from the politicians, restore our constitutionally limited republic, and return the United States to what the Founding Fathers intended. There are no sacred cows on this show. Our listeners are critical thinkers who do their homework. If you think this nation is headed in the wrong direction, join me as we discuss ways to set it right. America Talks on US Web Talk Radio.
From the right wing on the left coast, I am Jimmy Z, proud to be heard here on US Web Talk Radio. My show is conservative politics, laced with humor and powered by faith. Listen daily on demand at thejimmyzshow.com.
And we have Dr. Timothy Johnson on the line with us. Dr. Johnson, welcome back.
Thank you.
Let's talk about health care. And I can't help but to think about this. We had tea parties, the Tea Party Express, town hall meetings, and about a week or two ago, or last week, twice we had Congressman Steve King on, inviting people to come to the Capitol Hill to have that bill thrown out. And it seems like the people in the up there in the White House, Capitol Hill, in the Congress, and now the Senate, they're not really listening to what the American people want. It seems like we're being held hostage with this health care bill. What are your thoughts, sir?
I hate to say it, but I tend to agree with you that there seems to be a lack of listening to what is happening. And, some people want to lobby for term limits, and I think we have term limits. Let's all get out and vote and recognize what our elected officials are doing and what they're not doing. We have a responsibility as Americans. When we talk about we the people, that starts with the person that we see in the mirror every morning. And, one of the things that the Frederick Douglass Foundation has done in particular is we have taken on the healthcare bill from a little different side. If you go into the website, you will see that they're showing that, as mentioned earlier, MyAlpha 21. And MyAlpha 21 is talking about black genocide in 21st century America. But what it does is it starts off talking about eugenics and how eugenics became Planned Parenthood. And, of course, that's a major component that may cause some major heartaches for the Democratic-led Congress to get the bill passed. So we're taking it on from the standpoint that there are things within the health care bill that, once again, we're asking the government or expecting the government to pay for, that it should not be part of the federal government by any stretch of the imagination. And we're challenging that mindset and continue to talk about those things. But, who has time to read 15,000 pages of legislation? Even Congressman John Conyers said that, he didn't have time to read some. He would need 2 lawyers and 2 days in order to read legislation. And to me, one of the big responsibilities we have as a nation is stop allowing our elected officials to come up with legislation that they don't read as well as nobody else can read. Our Constitution is rather simple to read, although most of us don't read it, and we surely shouldn't have legislation and a lot of pork legislation that's inside of it that we can't read and we can't understand, and it doesn't benefit most of us.
So would you suggest to the people who are listening that if the elected officials are not listening to them, that we need to vote them out next year?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a huge responsibility. If we want to get our nation back in order, and we have to recognize that voting them out can't be about the lesser of the two evils. We have a responsibility as individuals, as citizens of the United States, to recruit, to identify, to assist those best representing our issues and our needs. And then if those individuals don't fulfill those obligations once elected, then we also have a responsibility to vote them out. I don't think anybody should feel that it's an obligation on our part to reelect them just because they've served for 2 years or they've served for the last 100 years. We have a responsibility to do the checks and balances, and our nation has changed drastically from 10 years ago, and it's going to continue to change as it does with every generation. So we need to stay a little closer to our elected officials, starting at the local level, because we spend entirely too much time on just the federal elections and not enough time on the local election.
And I just want to say this to the folks that have been making their voices heard. You've shown up to town hall meetings where you disagree with the policies. And I know that President Obama said the night that the health care was pushed through the Congress that anyone who doesn't agree with this is anti-American. President Clinton's up in the Senate now saying that even the coldest-hearted American should vote for this bill. And also we've been criticized as being Nazi, racism, anti-American. We don't believe it. We're not going to accept it. Let's be honest. It is nothing more than to make us go on some type of guilt trip to condemn us from speaking up and speaking of our voices. I want to go back to Planned Parenthood. A lot of listeners don't know when Planned Parenthood was originally conceived, I forget the founder of it, it was to annihilate America of black and yellow babies. It was a genocide project to basically eliminate anything but the white race. And yet the Democratic Party embraces it. And how much of our money, so if you go to union fees or you send it different places, go to these type of organization, and the Democratic Party gives tons of money to them and they give it back to them. And I believe that we even give money from our government, our tax money, to these organizations. American people got to know what these organizations really stand for, because they're not going to get it from the left-wing media.
That's exactly right. And the woman's name was Margaret Sanger.
Thank you.
And again, most